Now. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our friends over in other places. Welcome to Modern Sales Mastery. Let us know in chat, where are you calling, or chat, depending on what platform you're on. Let us know where you are calling in from today, and say hello to us in your native language. We always love seeing that. So today, I want to introduce you to my special guest, Mr. AJ Waters. Now, I met AJ actually. He was one of our clients and going through our Modern Sales Mastery program, selling with LinkedIn. And I was just so impressed by AJ. Like, he really got it. He really understood the marriage of marketing and sales enablement. So when I went to his profile and I saw that he was a solution and sales engineer, I had to scratch my head and go, wait, what? I totally thought that you were in marketing. So awesome. I'm so glad that we have you on the show today. AJ, tell the folks a little bit about who you are, and then we'll jump into today's today's presentation.
Well, thank you, Vivica, for the kind words. I'm not sure how much of that was embellished, but probably most of it.
None
my
of
name's
it.
AJ Waters. I'm the Vice President of Industry Solutions with InEight. InEight's a software company for the construction and capital projects industry. My background, I started out as a structural engineer, got a little bored crunching numbers in a corner, so I went into estimating, which is the same thing for those of you who don't know. And after a while, came across construction technology and always wanted to build cool things. And now we help all sorts of companies build cool things. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
So I love that we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts when working with your sales engineers. And I was trying to explain to someone the other day, what a sales engineer is. And it's not really an engineer per se, but you actually come from construction. So you actually come from what we typically think of as engineering, but can you explain to us what exactly is a sales engineer? And what is a sales engineer?
Yeah, I mean, so if you look it up with Webster, right, an engineer attached to the sales department to assist people with technical information and some advice. But for us, really, an SE is a hybrid, right? You either find someone that's in sales that can understand the technical side, or the way that I like to put it, an engineer that happens to be a people person, right? So that's where I came from, and
which is
so
really few and far between. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, you find the good ones and then you hang on to them, right? So, in our example, right, we are a lot of us at InEight engineers that came from construction. We understand the business, the problems that our customers are facing. But a sales engineer isn't necessarily always an engineer, right? They're the technical knowledge and the know-how of the system or equipment or whatever it is that your company might be selling, that can come along and kind of work through the solution for the prospect.
Now, would a sales engineer, would they have gone to engineering school, or are they just more like experts in a particular, are they literally engineers that went to to Waterloo engineering school, or are they just experts in an area?
Yeah, I would say the latter. They're typically just experts in an area, so they don't have to go to engineering school. A lot of times they may come up through sales. Sometimes they could come up from a company's support team, right? They've worked in support for whatever software or equipment or product is being sold for so long. They know it so well. And again,
Yeah.
you find those people that can interact with customers, and that's where you really go and find someone that has a little bit of technology aptitude, but also that people side.
Okay. All right. I love it. I love it. That's what I thought. But then then I started thinking about your role and what you did at InEight and the fact that you actually came from the engineering side. I'm like, well, maybe they do have to be engineers. And I have this whole theory around engineers. And what I think is that, thousands, millions of years ago, the world was trying to evolve, but we just weren't doing it fast enough. So the aliens came in and they said, okay, we're going to throw some alien blood in there, and the aliens are the engineers, and they're going to take us to the next level. Because listen, engineers are always just a little bit different than the rest of us.
Well, that part I'll agree with. Always a little bit different, but in a good way. In a good way.
But definitely in a good way. I mean, we'd still be like, eating with our hands and living in caves, maybe, if it wasn't for the engineer. I'm mostly joking, folks. I'm mostly joking. All right, so let us know, what role does a sales engineer then actually play within a company?
So they typically partner with the sales team, and it's interesting, right? Because the standard terminology is sales engineer. At InEight, we actually use solutions engineer. You'll see those
Right.
terms intermixed, but their role is to meet the customer where they're at, understand their struggles, develop solutions for those struggles based on what our product offering can do, right? And so, when you have a robust set of products and offerings, there's 10 different ways you could go about implementing a solution for a customer. And so the sales engineer, the solutions engineer's role is to understand the issues and pick the right solution for that particular customer. Each time it's very specific.
So how does that differ? Because wouldn't most salespeople go, well, that's what I do. So how does it, right? So how does it differ? How does what a sales engineer or a solutions engineer differ from what a sales guy or gal does? And how should they best be using you all?
That's a really good question. And a lot of times it comes down to, the company and or the product that's being sold, right? So there are good sales reps or account managers or account executives, whatever you call them, that can do a lot of maybe the first look. But at the end of the day, again, revert back to the fact that we came from construction, or we came from the industry, right? So we have lived the business process that this particular customer is trying to roll through, where the sales executive maybe hasn't done that, right? And so they do a lot of the work getting the opportunity in front of us. They do a lot of the work nurturing the opportunity, building that relationship. And then we come in as a partner on the opportunity to kind of take that technical brush through everything and show them exactly how this process or that verbiage translates into our system.
So I mean, at Vengresso, as far as I know, we don't have any sales engineers. So not all companies, have to have sales engineers. I'm assuming some companies are probably too small, or it's just the wrong industry. It just wouldn't make sense. But I mean, obviously you've got quite a few sales engineers being from construction. So having the literal engineering and the sales engineering background. So to educate, because our audience here is mostly, sales leaders, sales teams, sales individuals. How can you set the sales opportunity up for success utilizing someone like you, using a sales engineer?
That's a really good question. And for us, there are kind of two key points when it comes to setting a sales engineer up for success. Number one is treat it as a partnership, right? Introduce them properly, help them by taking great notes throughout your portion of the discovery stages, and also overshare information, right? Keep as much information available to the sales engineer as possible, because any keyword or topic could change the direction of the
Yeah.
entire solution. And then the second thing that's really key with the sales engineers is what we call discovery, at least on our end. But it's an interview of the customer to understand what those pain points are. What are the business problems you're trying to solve, right?
Yeah.
And so for us as sales engineers, that is a really key step to set up the perfect solution, right? We could come in and we could give a what I would call a generic demonstration of what our software does to
Yeah.
fill a gap. But if
Yeah.
we don't know what the real gap is, right, it's just going to be that generic demonstration. Think about going to purchase a car,
Yeah.
right? There's a big difference between purchasing a two-door coupe and a pickup. If you don't know that the problem is to haul stuff, right? You could
Right.
walk somebody up to a two-door coupe. And so
Yeah.
that's that really changes the methodology. And kind of just a little like bonus item for attending today, a third thing would be when it comes time to do the demonstration, right? So you've got your sales engineer brought on board. We've picked out the perfect solution. Now we've got the meeting with the prospect to show it to them. Keep the introductions to a minimum, right?
Oh my
Because
gosh.
if we've got an hour-long meeting, we probably have a 50-minute talk track in the system. So the longer you spend up front, going through the introductions, the tighter we start to squeeze that value proposition that we're going to present to a prospect.
Yeah, no, that is so true. I think that's I mean, you want to be friendly and sweet and kind and whatever, but I listening to a lot of sales recordings, 5 to 10 minutes of chit chat is 4 to 9 minutes too many. And the fact is, you want people to know who everyone on the call is, but on the other hand, like, they don't really care about you yet. Let's face it, they care about how you can help them, but until you've developed a relationship, they don't really care about your kids or your dog or whatever. So it's really important to keep that down to a minimum. I feel like, I mean, a lot of times chit chat, you're just waiting for all the decision makers to get on the call. But to your point, like, let's get into the solution as soon as possible.
Right.
So what did you always go ahead.
Sorry, one of the other key things that we like to do, right, is like you said, we want to be in the software. I can't tell you how many times we'll come into an opportunity where the competitor's been in PowerPoint the whole time, right?
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between seeing a solution in PowerPoint slides versus someone clicking through the actual system, pushing the buttons you'll push, right? And so the longer that we're up front spending on an introductory PowerPoint or, who we are as a company, the less time we get to really wow them with the buttons.
Exactly. Wow them with the actual solution. I absolutely. I mean, it's death by PowerPoint, especially, we all have Zoom fatigue and we've all died by PowerPoint before. So speaking of the do's and don'ts of working with the sales and engineer, what is the one thing you should always do for your sales engineer?
So it's probably the most difficult thing to do in any situation, but it's still the number one thing to always do with your SE, and that's to trust. Trust your sales engineer. They put together a solution based on what was learned, right? Together with you as an executive, a sales executive, and now they're walking through it. Interrupting them or taking them in a different direction, kind of mid-sentence, could be something that. Wow! At the end, I divert straight to the wow. There went the buildup, right?
Yeah.
And so be careful with the, coming in and jumping and talking over, because SEs have a reason for everything that they do, and they put together a very specific script to go that route. And so trust them, believe in what they're doing and kind of where they're headed. It doesn't mean don't add color commentary, because that's great. It's always good to work together and have that
Yeah.
ongoing dialogue. Just be careful redirecting if there's a big build in place.
Like if you've got chat in the, private chat in the background, maybe before interrupting, like say, are you going somewhere with this? Because to play the devil's advocate, I don't know that all sales engineers have the same personality you have. And I've definitely been on calls where and it might not be the sales engineer or the SE, but the expert in the product goes so far into the weeds. You're like, oh my God, I don't care. Like this, I mean, it's awesome that your product does A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because that's what matters to us. H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z don't matter to us. We don't need to learn about them on this discovery call. So are there, definitely, have the account execs, you need to let your sales engineers do their thing. But are there times when sales engineers go too deep too early? Like, how do you overcome that?
That is a really good question, and we spend a lot of time on that here at InEight, a lot, about the whole, because again, we're engineers by nature, right? So we're like,
Yeah,
look at all
exactly.
this fancy detail, look at the back end math involved and all this. And so it takes some effort to pull them back a level and stay there. And what's interesting is you get it from customers too, right? You'll hear
Yeah.
from the customer if you need to pull it up a level as
Yeah.
well. But there, like you said, the private chat behind the scenes is a big win, if you're able to do that, because you can kind of, hey, you might be going a little deep here, pull it up a level, and that works out well. And that's also a comment as a sales executive. If you see that happening, make that comment, right? That's a
Yeah.
different comment than the whole, hey, why don't you show them this, right? Like,
Right.
pulling them back up a level is a different style of comment, and that's where that partnership comes into play, and just having the relationship with one another to play off of each other in
Yeah.
that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, it really is a delicate balance because, the product inside and out, and you actually know the best solution for the buyer. The salesperson has the initial relationship with the buyer and might feel like they know what's best for the buyer. And the buyer's just like, tell me what I need to do, and like, tell me exactly what I need to do or no more, no less. And so you've got to find that delicate balance within there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And our sales executives here do a really good job of knowing where that balance point is,
Yeah.
and understanding our software. They spend a lot of time learning the business processes that we support, the value propositions that we have, and so it's pretty specific. But you know, as SEs, we're selling futures sometimes, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're a lot of times demonstrating maybe a version ahead of the software that others don't see. And so there
Yeah.
might be a button or a hiccup in there that's not quite fully tested yet, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
we
Exactly.
may be avoiding it on purpose. And so
Yes.
that's another one of those places where you just got to be careful.
What kind of training, and then I'll get back on track to our Q&A, but I'm curious because again, we don't work with sales engineers here at Vengresso yet. That might happen because we're moving into a little bit more into software. So that might be the next role we hire for. But what kind of training goes into finding that balance? Like, how do you and truly, I don't know the answer. This isn't a preconceived question. What, what do you and InEight do to find that balance? What training do you have to work out that balance? Or is it kind of like, okay, good luck with that? And it might be.
Right. Well, so at InEight, we look at a three-pronged approach for the sales engineer. Number one, you have background in construction, right? You understand the
Yep.
lingo, the business processes, that helps. So background in the industry we're supporting. Number
Yeah.
two, you have a technical acumen, right? You can click around a software or a mobile device and kind of understand where you're going. The third one is you have a personality. You're easily trustworthy, right? Like people instantly latch on to you when you get into the call.
Yeah.
Two of those can be taught. One of them can't, right?
Yeah.
So the personality one is the
Right.
first thing that we look for, because you can't teach that. You gotta really find that in the person, and then you gauge out how good is their acumen in the industry and with technology. How quick
Yeah.
are they learning software? So that's kind of how we approach it. We go to construction and people with that background. We find a personality, and then we figure out kind of the middle one. Do you have the acumen for
Yeah.
technology?
Yeah.
Once they're on board, then there's, again, multiple training types. You got to train them the software. You got to train them on sales approaches, and you got to train them on the administrative side of
Yeah.
tracking an opportunity, right? So
Because you are
there's a lot of work
numbers
involved.
people.
Yes. Yep.
You are numbers people after all. It's interesting because with sales, when we're hiring for a sales position, it's kind of like, to your point, let's make sure they've got the personality. Let's make sure they have the curiosity. We can always teach them about the product or the service later, right? It's really,
Yep.
I mean, one of our best salespeople came from, not, B2C industry, small deals, like totally not where what we do at Vengresso, not our buyer persona, but he had such a great personality. We're like, okay, this guy will be a good fit, and he is. But with a sales engineer, it's a little bit different because you actually do need to have that deep knowledge, that deep industry product knowledge, right? You're not going to do the same
ideally,
thing,
right?
likely.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we try really, really hard to find that knowledge, and not everybody does, right? And so that's one of the things that we consider to be a value prop when working for us or working with us, is that
Yeah.
we know the industry, we get it, we've been there, our boots are dirty, if you will.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. All right. So as we get to the end of the questions here, so what should you never do with your sales engineer? And I think we've already touched on this a little bit, but what are some other things? Like, the floor is yours. Every salesperson, let's just pretend every salesperson you've ever worked with in the past, every salesperson you ever might work with in the future, what do you want to tell them?
Well, so we kind
Of course,
of
no one
already
you're
touched
working
on
with
the
currently right now. They're all awesome.
right. None of that. Right. We already touched on a little bit the in the what should you do, like what should you always do is trust, and one of the big don'ts is don't tell me to demo something mid demo, right? Why don't you show them
Yeah.
this? Like, it might not be open, it might not be prepped, the data might not be ready.
Oh,
There's a lot of steps that go to preparing, walking through something. So when a sales rep goes, "Hey AJ, why don't you show them this?" I might not even have that loaded on my machine. We have certain
yeah.
softwares that require specific experts, right? So, but the real thing that is like the never do, and thankfully we don't have a big problem with this at InEight, but SEs are here. Like, one of the fundamental traits of an SE is that we want to help. We are here to help you. We want to be a part of the opportunity. We want to help the customer. We want to help you, right? And sometimes that can be taken for granted, right?
Yeah.
You're quick to jump in. You're quick. You kind of have that hero mentality that I'm going to come in and I'm going to help and I'm going to save and we're going to do all this stuff, right? And sometimes, you know, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, right? Like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have let you do that the second time. Why are
Right.
you taking advantage, you know, your emergency situation because maybe you skipped steps in the process or thought you could do discovery without us or whatever it might be, right? That puts us in a bind, and the more often you do that, the harder it is to work with you, right? So don't think that we can jump through every single hoop every single time. We'll do whatever
Right.
we can to help you, but we don't want to have to be in scramble mode all the time, right?
Right, right, exactly. So curious, and I'm sure it's differs for every company, so there's no black and white answer. But if like, so first of all, do SEs, are you like assigned salespeople, or are salespeople assigned SEs? Like, do you work with the same people all the time, or are sales engineers usually like a resource pool that the salesperson dips into, and you just never quite know what might be, you know, you might not know even the person very well that you're working with.
Yep. So that's an it depends question.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of 50-50 depending on the company. Some companies you're partnered up with the AE and you work together, you go after the same maybe industry, you go after the same customer type, you go after the same region. Other companies, it might be a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio AEs to SEs, right? So
Yeah.
you've got to really be good at shifting around and understanding. What I have noticed though, even in that method of the shared pool, is that
Yeah.
once you do good one time,
Yeah.
the sales executive will come back to you, right? So
Yep.
every time you do well, you kind of get the sales executive gets excited, they latch on and they're like, I want to bring you in on the next one and the next one. And that's how you get in front of some of those more high profile deals, right? You do a good job once,
Yeah.
they keep bringing you along, and you build that relationship, that partnership to really work together, even though it's a shared pool. You do it together a few times and away you go.
Yeah, it's funny. I think my husband was in sales at Oracle, and you know, yeah, there were SEs he always wanted to work with, and there were SEs that sometimes, I don't know if they got assigned, but he'd end up having to work with them. He's like, oh, because they would be that they were actually the example I was using earlier. They would get so into the weeds that everybody else, and they, unlike you, they didn't see the eyes glaze over, right? They didn't have that EQ. They had the IQ, but not the EQ. They couldn't pick up on those signs that they had totally lost everybody on the call, not just the client. So yeah, there's definitely, you can build your relations and your reputation within a company as an excellent SE. And it's funny because now he's moved to Amazon, and now he's got the role of the SE. So now he's trying to, you know, show his worth. And that's another thing, is a
Right.
new in a company, right? You got to show your worth to your sales folks so that they'll bring you in, I'm assuming. Two questions. One, I truly don't know. Are like, what's the pay structure? Do you are some sales folks hesitant to bring in SE because they have to split the commission, or like, why wouldn't they use you? Like, I mean, why wouldn't you bring someone in?
Right. Well, so with the pay structure, it's at least at InEight,
Yeah.
the SEs do have a commission side to their pay structure, but it doesn't come out of the AE's chunk, right? So it's a
Yeah, yeah.
separate, smaller, because the AE does a lot of the legwork to get all this. We get
Right.
the benefit of just showing up, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly,
but
exactly.
So there is a little bit involved because, we do want to be held responsible for the win in some way. But
Right.
at the same time, we don't pull it from the AE.
That's
Most of the
good.
time, when when a sales rep doesn't want to use us, uh, it's typically because they're trying to fast track the process, right? They're trying to skip steps in the sales cycle to get somewhere faster. So
Yeah.
they don't bring us in for a discovery and just say, you know what, I did a great discovery. Here's my notes. Go demo. And sometimes it
Yeah.
works and sometimes it doesn't, right? It can go both
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
So that's typically the reason that we see that they don't want to bring an SE in is they're trying to shortcut something,
Yeah.
or
Which is
that
never a good idea.
there are yeah, yeah, right. But there are cases where the client is just pushing, right? Like
Yeah.
you called me, I want to see something. So you called
Yeah.
me directly, show me something. And so in some cases like that, we have generic scripts that we'll walk through,
Yeah.
and then maybe we restart and do the discovery later, right?
Yeah, 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 exactly. So what is one final, because oh my gosh, it's 10 o'clock. Well, my time, 10 o'clock already. We're at the hour already. What is, one final piece of advice that you would give either account execs, sales execs, or leadership to make this relationship between sales and SEs more functional, and resulting in more sales.
The word that I just keep coming back to is partnership. Partner with SE, treat them as an equal, and SEs do the same, right? Like you're not smarter than the AE, you do something different, right? And just
Yeah.
because you're technical doesn't make you better. And if you treat that opportunity as a partnership, things will progress greatly. Overshare the information, stay on the same page, prep together, demo together, right? So that's the number one piece of advice that I always give to the SEs at InEight.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, AJ, so much for being our special guest today. I learned a lot about sales engineers. And I'm thrilled to have you on if you missed the beginning, and I noticed we had some issues with LinkedIn today. If you missed the beginning or most of this podcast and are listening to the rerun, the reason I pulled AJ in is not only is he a great sales engineer, but he like crushed the modern sales mastery training that we do. And he had such a great understanding, such a great 360-degree understanding of the whole process of sales, that I thought, let's bring this guy in here to talk about what he knows so that other sales professionals out there could benefit from it. So thank you again. Thank you so much, AJ. I'll let you go now. As per usual, as per every training I've ever done with InEight, we are 2 minutes over, but thank you so much for your time today.
Yep. Thank you. Have a wonderful Friday.
Awesome. And everybody, rest of you, have a great weekend. And some of you in APAC have already started your weekends in Australia, New Zealand. So lucky you. All right. See you later, everybody.